When my wife passed away, my son said something to me that I will never forget. He looked me straight in the eye and told me, very calmly, that I could not bring his mother back and that his wife's birthday only came once a year. Those words landed on me like a hard slap. I felt stunned, humiliated, and deeply hurt, not only for myself, but for the woman I had loved and honored for decades. The very next day, as if nothing cruel had been said, he approached me with an urgent request. He spoke casually, almost cheerfully, as though the day before had never happened. That moment became my opportunity to respond to the disrespect he had shown toward me and toward his late mother. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I simply took note of everything and decided to act in my own way. That morning my hands shook as I dialed my son's number at exactly 8:30 in the morning. I adjusted my black tie for the third time, trying to steady myself. On the kitchen counter sat my wife Linda's empty coffee mug, a faint lipstick mark still clinging to the rim. She had left it there the day before she went into the hospital. The kitchen felt unbearably hollow without her soft morning humming that used to fill the room every single day. After 4 rings, my son's groggy voice answered. I could hear loud music blasting through the phone, along with laughter and shouting in the background. His wife Ashley was yelling excitedly about party decorations. "Yeah," he said. "It is me," I replied. "Your father." I straightened my shoulders and forced my voice to stay calm. "The funeral service starts at 11:30 this morning." There was a pause. I heard him clear his throat. The music did not stop. "Dad," he said, sounding irritated, "I already told you yesterday. Ashley's birthday party is tonight. We have been planning this for months." His words poured over me like ice water. I tightened my grip on the phone until my fingers ached. "Your mother's funeral is today," I said quietly. "This happens once in a lifetime." He sighed as if I were being unreasonable. "Look, Mom is not coming back, but my wife's birthday happens once a year. The caterers are already here. The band is setting up. I appreciate everything Mom did for me over the last 35 years, but I cannot just abandon Ashley on her special day. You understand, right?" Before I could say another word, the line went dead. The dull buzz of the dial tone filled my ear. I sat completely still for exactly 3 minutes, staring at Linda's reading glasses lying beside the phone. The kitchen clock read 8:47 in the morning. Sunlight streamed through the window she had cleaned just the week before, catching the edge of my wedding ring and making it glint. On the counter, I noticed the funeral program. My son's name was printed neatly beneath the word pallbearer. I picked up a pen and slowly crossed his name out, my hand firm and deliberate with every stroke. At the cemetery, people kept looking around, expecting him to appear. Linda's sister, Carol, approached me several times. "Where is my nephew?" she whispered. "Has he called?" I had rehearsed my answer. "He has other commitments," I said. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. 23 people came to say goodbye to my wife of 40 years. Our neighbors, her friends from the garden club, old co-workers. Our son was not among them. I stood beside the casket alone, surrounded by familiar faces, while the empty space where my son should have been felt enormous. One of Linda's friends leaned toward me and whispered, "She was so proud of him. She talked about his success all the time." I nodded, my throat tight. Linda had defended our son until her final days. When he skipped her chemotherapy appointments, she would smile weakly and say, "He is just busy building his new life. Young couples need space." The pastor spoke about family, loyalty, and everlasting love. I watched as dirt fell onto the polished wood of the casket. Each shovelful felt like it was burying not only my wife, but the illusions I had carried about the man our son had become. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The passenger seat beside me, where Linda used to sit, stretched painfully empty. She always insisted we take her small sedan instead of my pickup truck, saying it was better for the environment. When her favorite song came on the radio, I shut it off immediately. I could not bear it. Our neighborhood looked exactly the same as it always had. Trim lawns, freshly painted mailboxes, the quiet street where we had built our entire life together. I pulled into the driveway and sat there for a long moment, gathering the strength to walk back into a house that no longer felt alive. The front door opened with the familiar click of the lock. I hung my keys on the hook Linda had installed years earlier. It was such a small, ordinary motion, yet it felt overwhelming in the silence. There was no humming from the kitchen, no television murmuring in the background, just the house settling around 4 decades of shared memories. I loosened my black tie and sank into my armchair. The brown leather one Linda always said clashed terribly with her floral curtains. She had wanted to redecorate for years, but I had been too busy building my construction business. Now those curtains would never be replaced. Our wedding photograph sat on the mantel. Linda was 23 in that picture, glowing in her grandmother's wedding dress. We had married right here in Cedar Falls, promising each other everything we had. I kept that promise. Perhaps I kept it too well. Memories flooded back without warning. Our son taking his first unsteady steps across the living room floor, his chubby hands reaching for Linda's open arms. Birthday parties with handmade decorations because we could not afford store-bought ones. Linda working double shifts at the diner while I struggled to get my company off the ground. She never complained. Not when I worked 16-hour days. Not when we lived on boxed macaroni for weeks at a time. "We are building his future," she used to whisper after our son fell asleep between us in our bed, still too young for his own room. On the nightstand, I found her Bible, a ribbon bookmark still resting in the Psalms. A folded note slipped out and fluttered to the floor. It read, in her careful handwriting, "My dearest Robert, please do not let our son forget us. We gave him everything we had. I hope it was enough. All my love, Linda." My hands trembled as I read it. In the closet, I discovered the box she had hidden so carefully. Inside were our son's report cards, saved from kindergarten through college. Every top grade had been celebrated, every achievement treasured. She had written notes on nearly every page. So proud. Our brilliant boy. The graduation photographs hurt the most. There he stood in his cap and gown, smiling confidently. His degree had cost us $200,000, paid for with Linda's overtime hours and my weekends on construction sites. His smile never once acknowledged the sacrifices that made it possible. I pulled my calculator toward me and began adding everything up, line by line, forcing myself to look at numbers I had avoided for years. The down payment on the house I had handed him without hesitation came first, $350,000. His wedding to his wife, Lauren, had cost another $75,000. The first car I bought him so he could focus on his future, $35,000. Graduate school he insisted he needed but never finished, $48,000 more. Then there were the so-called emergencies. Loans for vacations, money for Lauren's shopping trips, cash to rescue half-baked business ideas that never lasted long enough to fail properly. In the dishwasher, my wife Elaine's coffee mug still sat untouched. Her romance novel lay open on the nightstand upstairs, the bookmark placed carefully, waiting for eyes that would never return to those pages. Get well cards from friends and neighbors covered the kitchen counter, people who had checked on her weekly, sometimes daily, during her final months. People who had shown more care than our own son. The numbers on the calculator kept climbing. Over 15 years, the total came to $847,000. Nearly $1 million of our lives, given freely, fueled by love, hope, and the belief that we were helping our son build something meaningful. I thought about my own father then. He had been a stern man, not unkind but unyielding. He gave me nothing except the expectation that I would make my own way. "Build your own character," he used to say. For the first time in my life, I wondered if he had been right all along. Night settled outside the windows. I did not bother turning on the lights. The house felt heavy and still. A car pulled into the driveway and sat there, the engine idling. I did not move. If my son wanted to talk, he knew exactly where I was. After a moment, the engine revved, and the car drove away. At 6 o'clock the next morning, I sat at my mahogany desk with file folders arranged in neat, deliberate rows. Each folder bore a label I had written by hand. Ethan, education. Ethan, house. Ethan, wedding. My coffee grew cold as I opened the calculator application again and began the accounting my wife had always been too gentle to demand. Her reading glasses reflected the glow of my computer screen as I pulled up our bank records. 15 years of transactions stared back at me. Each one carried the same notation. Transfer to Ethan, loan to Ethan, emergency for Ethan. The papers rustled softly in the silent house, the only sound in what had become my new reality. College tuition came first, 4 years at $52,000 per year. I remembered writing every check while Elaine picked up extra shifts at the bakery to keep our own bills paid. All the while, our son partied at the university and told us how stressed he was. Then came graduate school. Another $48,000 for a master's degree he never finished. He dropped out to find himself overseas. That European trip had cost $35,000. Just temporary, Dad, he had said, until I get established. The house purchase nearly broke us. Ethan had been 25, standing in our living room with Lauren's engagement ring flashing on her hand. We found the perfect place, he said. We are just a little short on the down payment, $350,000. I co-signed the mortgage. I covered every dollar of the down payment. Family helps family, Ethan had said, pulling me into a tight hug. I will pay you back once the business takes off. What business? He had been working for me since graduation, collecting a salary he had not earned while learning skills I had hoped he would respect. Elaine's small notebook slipped out from between the files, her handwriting documenting every quiet sacrifice. Anniversary dinner canceled. Needed $5,000 for Ethan's car repair. Postponed doctor visit. Wedding costs higher than expected. Bought generic groceries this month. Sent money for Lauren's birthday. The final note hit hardest. We gave Ethan everything. I hope he remembers us kindly. I stared at the total again. $847,000. More than $750,000. My father had sent me into the world with $20 and a firm handshake. I built everything I owned from nothing. Ethan, meanwhile, treated it all like an inheritance he was entitled to spend while we were still breathing. I remembered him calling my company the family business last Christmas, as if he had built it beside me instead of stepping into a ready-made role. Lauren had nodded along approvingly, already imagining how the profits would be spent. Profits earned by my 40 years of labor. Something inside me shifted. My business instincts took over. This was no longer grief that needed comfort. This was a problem that demanded a solution. I had been emotional for too long, making excuses. Ignoring concerns Elaine had whispered to me late at night. Maybe we are doing too much for him, she had said after Ethan's latest emergency. Her photograph sat in the corner of the desk as I closed the files. I stood, feeling something firmer than sorrow settle in my chest. You were right to worry, I said quietly to her picture. The phone rang. Ethan's name lit up the caller identification. I watched it ring 4 times before answering. Hey, Dad, he said cheerfully. Hope you are doing okay after yesterday. I noticed he did not mention the funeral. He did not ask how I was managing without Elaine. I am managing, I replied evenly, my eyes drifting over the financial documents scattered across my desk. Good, he said. Listen, I am calling because we ran into some unexpected costs. Lauren's party turned out amazing, but we kind of went overboard. You know how it is. You only turned 32 once, right? I could hear Lauren in the background. Tell him about the band, she called out. Yeah, Ethan continued, laughing. We hired this incredible live band, took everyone to that new steakhouse downtown, and I got Lauren this beautiful diamond bracelet. She deserves the best. His voice dropped slightly. But now the credit card bills are coming in, and we are looking at about $15,000 that needs to be covered right away. $15,000. I did the math instantly. Loan number 47 over 15 years. Yesterday, I buried my wife. Today, my son was asking me to pay for a party. So can you just wire it to my account today? Ethan pressed. Lauren is really stressed about the bills, and you know how she gets when she is worried. The silence between us stretched longer than he expected. I looked at Elaine's photograph on my desk, then lowered my eyes to the clean columns of numbers that documented exactly how much my son had cost our marriage over the years. No, I said. There was a pause. Then his voice sharpened. What do you mean, no? Is there a problem with the bank or something? I mean no, Ethan, I replied evenly. I will not be giving you any more money. The cheerful tone vanished instantly. Are you seriously saying no to me right now? He snapped. After everything we have been through this week. Everything we have been through. As if he had stood beside me at Elaine's funeral instead of hosting a party. You are 35 years old, I said. So what? He shot back. What does that have to do with helping your son when he is in a jam? It is not like you cannot afford it. Lauren's voice rose sharply in the background. Tell him we need that money. We already spent it. I said no, I repeated. The word felt strange in my mouth. In all his life, I had never once denied him anything. This is unbelievable, Ethan said coldly. Mom just died, and you are being petty about money? She would want you to help us. The manipulation was effortless, familiar, polished by years of use. How many times had he played that card? How many times had Elaine and I folded because he wrapped entitlement in the language of family? Your mother wanted you at her funeral, I said quietly. His breathing turned sharp on the other end of the line. Fine, fine, he snapped. We will handle it ourselves. We will max out more cards, borrow from Lauren's parents, whatever, but do not expect us to come around much anymore if this is how you are going to be. The threat hung there, heavy and practiced. For 35 years it had worked perfectly. My money as the price of his presence, his absence as punishment for saying no. I understand, I said calmly. You what? I understand, I repeated. Take care, Ethan. I ended the call before he could respond. The phone lay silent on my desk. For the first time in decades, it was no longer a weapon he could use against me. I had ended the conversation on my terms. I opened my laptop and pulled up Ethan's employee file. Tomorrow morning we would have a different kind of conversation, one that took place in an office, not a kitchen. One where I was the employer, not the father who had forgotten the difference. If Ethan wanted to treat me like a stranger, I would meet him professionally. At 7:30 the next morning, I walked into Foster Construction's lobby, nearly 2 hours before Ethan usually arrived. His employee photograph hung on the management wall, smiling confidently in a tailored suit I had purchased for him. I studied that image with unfamiliar eyes, seeing entitlement where I had once seen promise. In my office, Ethan's personnel files were spread across my desk like evidence in a trial. 8 years of employment records told a story I had refused to read. Missed deadlines, complaints from subcontractors, inflated expense reports, projects delayed because Ethan prioritized long lunches over job site supervision, client relationships damaged by his casual disregard for commitments. For years, I had excused it all. Family loyalty. Elaine's gentle reminders that he was still learning. The documents told the truth I had avoided. Any other employee would have been dismissed years ago. At 8:45, I called Sarah Whitman into my office. As the Director of Human Resources, she would need to handle the process properly. She showed no surprise when I explained my decision. She had been documenting Ethan's performance issues for months, waiting for me to stop protecting him. I will prepare the termination paperwork immediately, she said quietly. Security escort? She asked. Yes, I replied. Standard protocol for management terminations. After she left, I practiced my words in the mirror. Calm, neutral, professional. No emotion. No explanations beyond what the law required. Ethan would walk into this room as an employee. He would leave as a former one. At 9:30, Ethan arrived 15 minutes late. laughing with the receptionist about recovering from Lauren's birthday party. His voice echoed through the lobby while nearby employees avoided eye contact with my closed door. He stopped at the coffee machine, completely unaware of what was coming. "Ethan, come to my office immediately," I said through the intercom. My voice carried authority he was not used to hearing. "Sure, Dad," he replied casually. "Let me just grab my coffee." "Now, Ethan." The silence that followed told me he had heard the difference. His footsteps moved down the hallway slowly, heavier than usual. When he opened my door and saw Sarah seated beside my desk with documents in front of her, his smile faltered. "What is with the formal setup?" he asked, forcing a relaxed tone that did not quite land. I remained seated, my hands folded neatly in front of me. "Ethan," I said, "your employment with Foster Construction is terminated effective immediately." He laughed, but the sound was thin and forced. "Very funny, Dad. What is this really about?" I slid the termination papers across the polished desk. "Please review these documents and sign where indicated." His fingers trembled slightly as he picked them up. His eyes moved quickly over the legal language, his face draining of color. "You cannot be serious," he said. "This is a family business." "This decision is based solely on your work performance and professional conduct," I replied evenly. "Your position has been eliminated as part of organizational restructuring." His voice cracked despite his effort to control it. "This is about yesterday, is not it?" "Look, I am sorry about the money," Ethan said quickly, his voice shifting as panic crept in. "We can work this out." I did not move. "Security will escort you so you can collect your personal belongings." His expression collapsed from disbelief into desperation. "Mom would not want this," he insisted. "You know she would not." He leaned forward, trying to summon the guilt that had always bent me before. This time, I pressed the security button on my desk. "This is a business decision," I said evenly. "It is not personal." Moments later, Mike Reynolds appeared in the doorway, professional but visibly uncomfortable. Ethan's face flushed deep red as reality finally set in. Employees gathered quietly along the hallway, watching as the company owner's son was escorted out like any other terminated employee. There was no special treatment now. "Dad, please," Ethan said, his voice cracking as he grabbed his coffee mug and a framed photo of Lauren from his desk. "Think about what this means." For the first time during the entire meeting, I met his eyes. "I have," I replied. Through the glass of my office window, I watched him carry his small, pitiful collection of personal items out to his car. His shoulders shook, whether from anger or grief I could not tell. When he turned back toward the building for one final look, I turned away. Sarah returned shortly after with the signed paperwork. "All access codes have been disabled," she said quietly. "His computer access is terminated." I walked into the lobby myself and removed Ethan's photograph from the management wall. I placed it face down in a drawer. The empty space it left behind somehow made the wall look cleaner. A gentle knock sounded at my door. "Mr. Foster," my assistant said carefully. "Someone is here to see you without an appointment." Designer heels struck the marble floor with sharp, angry clicks. Lauren Foster stormed past the reception desk without waiting for permission, her perfectly styled hair slightly ruined by the wind outside. Ethan followed a few steps behind her, looking humiliated and defeated. Nothing like the confident man who had walked in earlier that morning. "How dare you humiliate Ethan like this?" Lauren shouted, pointing directly at me as she crossed the threshold of my office. I remained seated, offering no acknowledgement of her dramatic entrance. Ethan stepped between her and my desk, his embarrassment deepening. "Lauren, let me handle this." She ignored him completely. "We have bills to pay," she snapped, "a lifestyle to maintain. This company belongs to Ethan too." "This is a private workplace," I said calmly. "You need to leave." Her face darkened with rage. "We deserve severance, at least 6 months. Ethan worked here for 8 years. You owe us." Ethan tried weakly to calm her. "Dad, please, can we talk about this privately?" No, Lauren cut him off. He needs to hear this. I know about wrongful termination laws. Ethan was an at-will employee, I replied without raising my voice. No severance is required by law or by contract. Her attacks turned vicious. Elaine would be ashamed of how you are treating her son, she hissed. You are having some kind of breakdown, are not you? Just a bitter old man taking his grief out on us. Ethan's face went pale. Lauren, stop. Please do not say that. My jaw tightened, but I stayed composed. This was exactly what I had expected from her. Manipulation disguised as righteous outrage. Ethan tried one last time to regain control. Dad, I know I messed up with the funeral, he said quickly. I am sorry, but destroying my career will not bring Mom back. Think about our family. Think about future grandchildren. The words hung between us, empty and calculated. I looked at the man who shared my blood, but none of my values. What family? I asked quietly. Lauren shifted tactics immediately. We will sue for our share of Elaine's estate, she declared. Ethan is entitled to half of everything. We know about the life insurance policy. Elaine left everything to me, I said simply. Her confidence faltered. That is impossible. We are getting a lawyer. I pressed the security button again as her voice rose dangerously. Mike Reynolds returned, this time with another guard. Their presence filled the doorway. Several employees stood frozen in the hallway, drawn by the noise. I am not leaving, Lauren screamed as security approached. This is theft. This is abuse. Her resistance changed nothing, though it was loud enough for the entire office to hear. Her threats echoed through the lobby as she was escorted out. Ethan stood helplessly, watching his wife being removed from the building where he no longer worked. His humiliation deepened with every step she took. When the noise finally faded, he remained alone with me. I am all the family you have left, he whispered. The words were meant to break me. Instead, they clarified everything. I looked at the stranger wearing my son's face and spoke the truth he had never been forced to hear. No, I said. You are just someone who used to be my son. His face crumpled. For a brief moment, I saw the little boy who once ran into my arms after school. Then, the moment passed, and only the entitled stranger remained. He left without another word. I stepped into the hallway and addressed my employees calmly, assuring them that this was a personal matter and that business operations would continue without disruption. Most of the employees nodded with quiet understanding. They had watched Ethan's declining work ethic for years and knew exactly why this had ended the way it did. Make sure Mrs. Foster is never allowed back into this building, I told security firmly. When I was finally alone in my office, my hands began to tremble just slightly. The confrontation was over. The worst of it had passed. I looked at Elaine's photograph on my desk. I hope you understand, I said softly. I opened my computer and searched for estate planning attorneys. It was time to move forward and accelerate the next phase of what needed to be done. I scheduled an appointment for that same afternoon with Robert Chen. As I closed the calendar, I noticed Ethan's birthday marked for the following month. I deleted it without hesitation. The law offices of Chen and Associates occupied the top floor of the tallest building in Cedar Rapids. At 2:30 in the afternoon, I stepped into the reception area carrying my leather briefcase. Inside were Elaine's will, insurance policies, and the financial records that would permanently reshape what remained of my family. The receptionist recognized me immediately and escorted me straight to Robert Chen's corner office. Sunlight poured through tall windows overlooking downtown, illuminating shelves of legal volumes and neatly stacked case files. The space radiated seriousness and discretion. Robert rose from behind his mahogany desk, concern written clearly across his face. We had been friends for more than 20 years. He had handled Elaine's will, my company's incorporation, and every legal matter that required absolute trust. How are you holding up, Robert? He asked gently. I declined his offer of coffee and sat in the leather chair across from him. I need to make changes to my estate planning, I said. His expression shifted immediately into professional focus. Of course. Updating beneficiaries after Elaine's passing is expected. No, I said, opening my briefcase and laying the documents on his desk. I am removing Ethan entirely. The words hit him hard. His professional composure slipped for just a moment. Robert, I need you to understand what led to this, he said carefully. I explained everything in a steady voice. Ethan's absence from the funeral, his exact words about Lauren's birthday party, the demand for money the very next day. Robert's face darkened as he listened. As Elaine's friend and our family attorney, he understood the depth of the betrayal. I want an entirely new will, I continued. The primary beneficiary will be the Elaine Foster Memorial Foundation. Robert leaned forward. Alan, I am required to confirm that you are thinking clearly. I have never been more certain of anything in my life. I explained my vision in detail. Education scholarships for underprivileged students, funding for cancer research, support for charities Elaine had quietly donated to for years. Ethan is to be explicitly excluded, I added, along with any future descendants. Robert's concern slowly shifted into admiration as I outlined the foundation's structure. Transferring company assets into an irrevocable trust would protect everything from future legal challenges. I would retain control during my lifetime. Upon my death, the foundation would assume ownership. We will need to change all insurance beneficiaries as well, Robert noted, writing rapidly. This is extremely comprehensive planning. I told him I intended to sell the family home and donate the proceeds to the foundation. Elaine's jewelry would be auctioned for charity. There is only one exception, I said quietly. Elaine's wedding ring will be buried with me when my time comes. And Ethan's childhood belongings? Robert asked gently. Donated, I replied. I am removing him from my life completely. Robert fulfilled his ethical duty by questioning my mental clarity and decision-making capacity. I answered every question calmly and precisely. My reasoning was consistent, detailed, and sound. Gradually, he stopped questioning and began executing. 2 legal witnesses from his firm joined us for the signing. My signature remained steady, despite the gravity of every document placed in front of me. Robert explained that once signed, the changes took effect immediately. Ethan was now fully disinherited. I want formal legal notice delivered to him, I said. Additional documents followed quickly. Power of attorney papers removing Ethan entirely. Medical directives excluding him from all healthcare decisions. A living will specifying my care preferences. Robert documented my mental competency thoroughly. Tomorrow, I said, I will visit every bank and financial institution. Retirement accounts, investment portfolios, everything. I can coordinate that for you, Robert offered. As we finalized plans for the foundation, something unexpected happened. I felt peace, real peace. We discussed trustees, board members, and the first scholarship recipients. Elaine's memory would live on through education, something she had always believed in deeply. She would be proud of this, Robert said as we stood to conclude. Elaine always believed in helping others build a future. For the first time since her death, I felt something warmer than resolve. I felt satisfied. Robert understood immediately that this was not revenge. It was justice. My shift from grieving father to deliberate philanthropist was complete. We shook hands outside the law office, and as I walked toward my car, I glanced at my phone. 3 missed calls from Ethan. That alone told me he was finally starting to understand the seriousness of what he had done. I deleted the voicemails without listening and put the phone back in my pocket. The next phase was already in motion. That evening, I arrived at the Riverside Country Club, a place I had known for years. The elegant lobby welcomed me with familiar luxury. Dark wood paneling lined the walls. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light across marble floors, and oil portraits of founding members watched silently from above. This was old money, old values, and long memories. As treasurer of the board, I had walked these halls for nearly 15 years. 12 board members were already gathered around the long polished table, chatting quietly about routine club business while waiting for the meeting to officially begin. The scent of leather chairs and fresh coffee blended with hushed conversations about recent events. William Carter, our board president, approached me with genuine warmth. "Alan, the memorial service was beautiful," he said softly. "Elaine would have been very pleased." "Thank you," I replied. "And thank you for the flowers. They meant a great deal." Elaine's sister, Diane Morris, who had been a club member even longer than I had, joined us. Her eyes searched my face. "I kept looking for Ethan during the service," she said carefully. "Where was he?" The question I had been expecting finally arrived. I paused briefly, then decided honesty would honor Elaine more than polite deflection. "Ethan chose not to attend his mother's funeral," I said. The silence spread instantly around us. Conversations stopped. Faces turned. Diane's complexion drained of color. "Chose not to?" she whispered. I repeated Ethan's exact words, explaining that his wife's birthday party had taken priority. I did not editorialize. I did not exaggerate. The reaction around the table said everything. Disgust, disbelief, quiet judgment. William's wife, Nancy, had overheard the exchange from the hallway. I noticed her step away, already pulling out her phone. Within minutes, she was making calls. By the end of the hour, the story had reached the Ladies' Bridge group. By the end of the evening, it had spread through Rockford's social circles like wildfire. I returned home unaware of how quickly the consequences would unfold. The first fallout hit Lauren the very next morning. Halfway through her private yoga session at the exclusive studio she attended, the instructor asked her to leave. "We prefer members who reflect family values," the woman said coolly. Later that day, Ethan received a polite but firm call from the country club canceling his lunch reservation. Their usual table at Romano's Italian Bistro was suddenly no longer available. Confusion turned into anger as the pattern became impossible to ignore. Saturday brought Ethan's most humiliating moment yet. His regular golf foursome made transparent excuses and left early. The club's pro-shop manager gently suggested that Ethan might feel more comfortable playing elsewhere. He walked to his car alone, fully aware that everyone knew. Lauren's shopping trip to Bergman's boutique shattered whatever denial she had left. Sales associates who once greeted her warmly now treated her with icy indifference. Her request to increase a store credit line was delayed without explanation. The manager suggested she might prefer shopping at a different location. Ethan's professional life unraveled just as quickly. Job interviews were quietly canceled. Former contacts stopped returning calls. A networking lunch at the Chamber of Commerce ended abruptly and awkwardly. Potential employers already knew the story before he sat down. The final blow came at the upscale salon Lauren had frequented for years. Her standing appointment was suddenly canceled. As she overheard other clients discussing the man who skipped his own mother's funeral, she fled the building in tears. The local paper's society column mentioned the disappointing absence at Elaine's memorial. Church members voiced open disapproval. Former friends avoided Ethan and Lauren at public events. Ethan tried desperately to explain. He claimed I was exaggerating. He insisted the situation had been misunderstood. No one believed him. Rockford was a tight-knit community. It had rendered its verdict. Lauren's collapse came swiftly. She confronted Ethan, furious about their ruined reputation, demanding he fix everything immediately. When he admitted he had no idea how, she threatened to leave him if things did not change. I learned about all of this indirectly, through acquaintances and quiet phone calls. I felt no guilt, only confirmation. Rockford's values mirrored my own. Loyalty, respect for the dead, basic human decency. Ethan had violated all of them. The community was honoring Elaine by rejecting those who had dishonored her. My phone rang during breakfast the following morning. "Mr. Foster," the bank manager said cautiously, "Ethan and Lauren's mortgage payment is now 30 days overdue. You are still the guarantor on that loan, correct?" I paused, already considering the implications. "I would like to schedule a meeting tomorrow morning," I replied. We need to discuss changes to my guarantees. Financial pressure would finish what social exile had started. At 9 o'clock the next morning, I walked through First National Bank's marble lobby, past portraits of its founders, men who had built their fortunes on discipline, integrity, and responsibility. David Keller, the bank manager, welcomed me into his corner office overlooking the Cedar River. His nervous energy was unmistakable as he reviewed the files spread across his desk. Mortgage documents, loan agreements, guarantee forms, a clear paper trail of dependency that was about to end. "Alan, thank you for coming in on short notice," he said carefully. "Ethan's mortgage is now 60 days delinquent. The outstanding amount is $18,400. I sat calmly, hands folded. "I understand you are expecting me to cover it," I said. "Well, yes," David replied hesitantly, "as you have done for the past 3 months." The assumption lingered in the air. "I am withdrawing my guarantee," I said evenly, "effective immediately." David's face went pale. I do not understand," he stammered. "You have guaranteed this loan for 8 years. I slid the prepared legal documents across his desk, drafted meticulously by Robert Chen. "That is no longer the case," I said. And for the first time, even the bank understood that everything had changed. "You will find everything is in proper order," I said calmly. 30 days' notice, exactly as required by law." David immediately called the bank's legal department, his fingers unsteady as he put the phone on speaker. I remained seated, watching the steady flow of morning traffic crossing the river bridge outside his window. Elaine and I had walked that bridge countless times over the years. The attorney's voice came through clearly. My withdrawal of the guarantee was lawful, complete, and enforceable. David exhaled shakily. "That means we will have to begin foreclosure proceedings." "I understand," I replied without hesitation. "Please expedite the process." Across town, Ethan was enduring his 10th job interview in 2 weeks. The interviewer's polite but distant demeanor followed the same pattern he had come to dread. His carefully rehearsed explanations about seeking new opportunities went nowhere. They already knew the story. "Thank you for coming in, Mr. Foster," the interviewer said. "We will be in touch." The phrase carried finality. Ethan walked out with slumped shoulders toward his aging Toyota. The BMW had been repossessed the previous month. That afternoon, Lauren faced her own reckoning at Nordstrom. Her platinum credit card was declined while she tried to buy a replacement mascara, the one she had cried away. "There must be a mistake," she said sharply to the uncomfortable sales associate. Her furious call to customer service delivered the truth. "Your co-signer has withdrawn his guarantee. The account is suspended pending full payment of the outstanding balance." Other customers watched as Lauren argued loudly into her phone, her humiliation growing by the second. The reality became undeniable. I had removed every financial safety net they had taken for granted. When Ethan and Lauren returned home that evening, the house was dark. The electricity had been shut off. A notice from the utility company cited unpaid bills totaling over $1,200. Ethan's attempts to negotiate failed the moment the representative learned he was no longer employed. Their first night by candlelight was a brutal lesson in consequences. Lauren paced the dark living room, designer heels clicking against hardwood floors, accusing Ethan of ruining everything. His weak attempts to blame me for being vindictive only fueled her hysteria. "Fix this or I am gone," she spat. Ethan's frantic credit applications were denied instantly. Without steady income, his debt-to-income ratio was catastrophic. Lauren's maxed-out cards offered no relief. For the first time, bankruptcy entered their conversations with real fear. The garage sale that followed was pathetic. Wedding gifts that had cost guests hundreds sold for $20. Former friends drove past without stopping. Lauren watched her jewelry disappear to strangers while Ethan sold his golf clubs to a teenager. The BMW's repossession became neighborhood entertainment. The tow truck arrived in broad daylight. Ethan removed personal items under the driver's impatient stare, while Lauren screamed accusations. Curtains shifted as neighbors watched. That evening, I drove past their house and observed the chaos quietly. This was not cruelty. It was consequence. Elaine had always believed actions carried results. Ethan was finally learning that lesson. When he called, begging for a face-to-face meeting and claiming he had something important to say, I agreed. We would meet at Morrison Park the following afternoon. It was the same park where I had taught him to ride a bicycle 30 years earlier, back when he looked at me with trust instead of calculation. After the call ended, I picked up a framed photograph of Ethan as a boy on that bicycle, grinning with scraped knees and pride. I stared at it for a long moment, then placed it face down on my desk. 6 months after my meeting at the bank, the county foreclosure auction took place on the courthouse steps. I watched from across the street inside my black sedan as 1247 Maple Avenue, Ethan and Lauren's dream home, was offered for public sale. The auctioneer read the legal description in a flat, bureaucratic tone while a small crowd gathered. Real estate investors, curious onlookers. Ethan and Lauren stood apart, Lauren's tears catching the morning sunlight. Through binoculars, I observed their final humiliation. Opening bid is $280,000 for this 4-bedroom colonial, the auctioneer announced. A woman in a navy business suit raised her hand confidently. Ethan whispered urgently to Lauren, trying to identify her. The bidding climbed to $315,000, narrowing to just 2 participants, the mystery woman and a local contractor. When my attorney, Robert Chen, arrived and nodded subtly to the woman, Ethan's confusion hardened into realization. "That is Dad's lawyer," he whispered, his voice carrying across the quiet crowd. Lauren shook her head in disbelief. He would not. He could not. Ethan attempted to approach the bidder, but courthouse security blocked his path. The auction continued with mechanical efficiency while his world collapsed in real time. I watched silently, knowing that the final lesson had been delivered. $317,000, the woman in the navy suit called out clearly. The auctioneer raised his hand. "Going once, going twice, sold." Ethan's legs buckled beneath him. Lauren's scream tore through the crowd. "That is our home," she shrieked, her voice echoing off the stone walls of the courthouse as the gavel struck and sealed their fate. I stepped out of my car and walked toward the courthouse steps. When Ethan saw me, understanding finally crashed down on him. In that moment, he grasped the full scope of what I had done over the past 6 months. The withdrawal of the loan guarantee, the precise timing, the bid calculated to match the remaining mortgage balance down to the dollar. None of it had been emotional. It had been executed with the same precision I used to run my business. The mystery bidder stepped forward. It was Sarah Whitman, my trusted executive assistant, acting as the authorized agent for a newly formed holding company. Ethan staggered toward me, his voice barely holding together. "How could you do this to us?" "I did not do anything," I replied evenly. "The bank did." He babbled desperately about Elaine's flower garden, about how much she loved that house. "Elaine is not here to see what you have become," I said quietly. Lauren lunged toward me, screaming accusations about elder abuse and mental incompetence. Robert Chen stood nearby, calmly documenting her outburst while courthouse security moved in and restrained her. The entire scene unfolded in public, leaving no doubt about who they truly were. 2 weeks later, the moving truck parked outside the house looked embarrassingly small for the life they were leaving behind. Lauren threw clothing into suitcases with violent fury. Ethan moved slowly, carefully wrapping Elaine's crystal vase, the last object that connected him to his mother. Neighbors watched from their windows. No one offered help. The social exile was complete. That night, Lauren delivered her ultimatum. She could not live like this anymore. She admitted she had been speaking with her former boyfriend and made it clear she was leaving. "I married into a wealthy family," she snapped. "Not this." Her final words cut deepest. "Your father was right about us." Ethan spent his last night alone in the empty house, walking through rooms filled with echoes of better times. In a kitchen drawer, He found a folded note written in Elaine's careful handwriting. "Ethan, remember that we love you." For the first time, real tears fell as he finally understood what he had lost. Sarah handed me the keys a few days later. I accepted them with quiet resolve. I had already decided the house would be renovated and donated to a family who truly needed it. Elaine would have approved. That evening, my phone rang. Ethan was calling from a payphone outside a cheap motel, his cell service canceled. I saw his name on the screen and let it go to voicemail. The final conversation could wait. 3 months later, on a cold November evening, Ethan stood on my front porch. I watched through the living room window as his finger hovered over the doorbell for nearly a full minute. When I finally opened the door, I did not invite him inside. The sight of him startled me. Unshaven, wrinkled shirt, ill-fitting jeans. He looked older by years, thinner, defeated. The arrogance he once wore so comfortably was gone. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling, "I know I messed up." He launched into a rehearsed confession, explaining how he now lived in a studio apartment above a laundromat, worked minimum wage at a gas station, and how Lauren had left him for her former boyfriend, a man who owned several restaurants. "I have learned what really matters," he insisted. When he shifted tone and suggested I must be lonely in my large house, offering to become the son his mother would have wanted, I recognized every manipulation tactic immediately. "When is your mother's birthday?" I asked suddenly. He hesitated. "June 15th. Wrong. And her favorite flower? Roses? Wrong again. Elaine had loved daisies. In that moment, clarity settled over me completely. Ethan had never truly known his mother. His frustration surfaced as the old entitled edge crept back into his voice. "This is ridiculous. Just tell me what you want me to say." Eventually, the truth emerged. "Okay," he admitted. "I need help. I have eviction notices. I will pay you back when I get on my feet. You have more than enough to help family." He still saw me as a source of money. His final attempt came wrapped in Elaine's memory. "Mom would hate seeing us like this. She believed in second chances. I miss her too. We both loved her." For a brief moment, I felt the pull of Elaine's gentle heart. Then I understood. This was exactly what she had feared. "You want to know what your mother really thought?" I said. I retrieved Elaine's journal and read her words aloud. "I am afraid Ethan only loves our money. What if we raised a child who cannot love at all?" His silence answered everything. "Elaine died knowing who you really are," I continued calmly. "She changed her will before she passed. She left you nothing, because she knew you would waste it." Ethan stood frozen on my porch, finally stripped of every illusion he had ever lived by. Ethan's mask finally shattered. The calm apology vanished, replaced by angry threats about contesting the will and telling anyone who would listen that I was senile. The bitterness in his voice exposed exactly who he was beneath the performance. His final words were meant to wound me. "I hope you die alone in this house." Instead of pain, I felt clarity. Seeing his true nature so plainly brought an unexpected sense of closure. I stepped back and closed the door without another word. He pounded on it for several minutes, shouting into the night, while I walked calmly into the kitchen and put water on for tea, moving as though nothing unusual had happened. By the time his car finally pulled away, the house was quiet again. I sat in Elaine's favorite chair, her journal resting in my hands. For the first time since her death, I felt completely at peace. I looked at our wedding photograph and spoke softly. "It is finished, my love." 1 year later, I walked through Riverside Cemetery on a bright May morning, carrying a fresh bundle of daisies. Birds sang in the oak trees overhead, and spring flowers lined the paths. I felt healthier, steadier, and more grounded than I had in years. Kneeling beside Elaine's polished granite headstone, I arranged the daisies carefully and spoke to her as if she were sitting beside me. I told her about the first year of the Elaine Foster Memorial Foundation, 20 scholarships awarded to deserving students, $200,000 donated to cancer research in her name. A community center dedication scheduled for her birthday. I mentioned Ethan briefly, without emotion. He was working at Sam's gas station along Route 6. His divorce was finalized. Lauren had remarried a restaurant owner. Ethan lived quietly now, isolated and struggling. I felt no pleasure in his hardship, only a sense that balance had been restored. After leaving the cemetery, I stopped at the Morning Glory diner for breakfast. Ethan was working behind the counter, wearing a stained uniform. When our eyes met, recognition flashed across his face, followed by visible shame. I ordered coffee calmly, treating him no differently than any other employee. "How are you doing, Dad?" he asked quietly. For the first time, his voice held genuine humility. "I am well," I replied. "I know sorry is not enough," he said. "No," I answered honestly. "It is not." He nodded. "I understand now what I lost. It was never about the money. You wanted me to love you, not your wallet. Mom wanted that too." His tears this time felt real. "I did what I had to do," I said. "Elaine would have approved. I have no regrets." "I know," he said softly. "I deserved all of it." "Yes," I replied. "You did." When he asked if there was any way back, I answered truthfully. "I do not know. Maybe, but not with words. You would have to prove you have changed through your actions." I told him about my new life, volunteering at the community center, new friendships formed through service, Sunday dinners with the Johnson family, whose daughter received one of Elaine's scholarships. I told him about Grace, a kind widow from church whom I was now seeing. My life was full again, built on purpose and honest relationships. Visiting Sarah Patterson, the Foundation's first scholarship recipient, brought deep satisfaction. Her gratitude for the chance to attend nursing school, her letter honoring Elaine on the Foundation's website. Elaine's legacy lived on through education. Driving home, I passed Ethan's former house. The Ramirez family had transformed it into a warm, joyful home. Mr. Ramirez waved from the garden Elaine once tended. Children laughed in the yard where Ethan had once played. The house finally reflected everything Elaine had valued. That evening, I prepared dinner in the kitchen we once shared, setting a single place without sadness. My phone rang. Grace was calling about our weekend plans. I smiled, feeling something I had not felt in a long time: happiness. Standing in the garden at sunset, trimming Elaine's rose bushes, I felt the deep peace of a man who had chosen justice over denial and love over indulgence. That night, I went to bed early and slept soundly for the first time in 2 years. I dreamed of Elaine smiling at me, her voice gentle and sure. "You did the right thing, Alan. I am proud of you." Justice had been served. Love had required difficult choices, but they had been the right ones. Rest in peace, my love.